DeSanto Propane is 4 generations strong as a trustworthy family-owned business with unmatched customer service. Go online at DeSantoPropane.com for more info or call toll-free at 1-800-752-4574. Since 1937, the difference has been DeSanto Propane.
All right, everybody, welcome into this week's edition of Concrete Jungle, New York baseball podcast here on FingerLakes1.com. Paul Russo and Kyle Evans here with you. Officially 1 week out from, or post-trade deadline, rather, so get to debrief a little bit on that, along with the other baseball stuff happening here for the teams. So we'll jump right into this deal, Kyle. Start on the Yankees side of things. Yeah, I still am in not shock, obviously, but it's like, okay, we're rolling with what we got on that front. It's been nice. There's a little bit of immediate impact from Luis Garcia, obviously, and everything like that. So we'll see how everything fully plays out there. But I guess maybe the biggest news out of the deadline, frankly, was probably the fact that we did get George Lombard Jr. called up early last week, post deadline on Tuesday. And we talked a little bit about it ourselves on another podcast on Thursday about it, but it's just kind of been a nice breath of fresh air seeing him over at short. There's an element of confidence, as I called it, I think, with the infield in general now that maybe we did not see necessarily with Volpe over at short. I hate kind of viewing it from that prism, but like, I know I said it to you, those double plays that Jazz had with Lombard, Jazz didn't seem like he had to worry necessarily anymore about where he might have to go or anything like that. So on that end, it's been great. And then obviously offensively, Lombard's had a big, immediate, loud impact as well. So obviously in the day since there has been offensively some rookie pains, I would say, obviously. So, but overall, I would say the positives out of the trade deadline have to be Lombard with the Yankees, and post deadline on that front. Just, I don't know, man. I will preface it with this. I know you'll probably say the same thing. Mitch Garver will not be on the Yankee roster. That was a depth thing, if anything else. And if he is on the roster, we got somehow even bigger issues to attend to.
Yeah, it was a pretty disappointing trade deadline. We saw it all week, even with a 500 week, their offense has just been really, really bad. And we're talking really bad. In fact, 10 of the last, or 4 of their last 6 games, they've scored 2 runs or less. And the one game that they didn't, they put up, what was it, like 9 against the Cardinals and then lost. So it just, every night, it's hard to even get a run or two across. We saw that yesterday as they tried to go for the sweep. Second and third one out, couldn't get the job done. They're just a really bad team with runners in scoring position at the bottom of the league in average and on base percentage and whatever else you want to throw in there. And you look and you just feel bad for the pitching. I mean, the starting pitching has been unbelievable, aside from, it's funny enough, right after the trade deadline ended when Cam Schlittler started against the Cardinals. That was the worst start by a starting pitcher in a long time. But since then, like yesterday, he bounced back. And he didn't deserve that. I mean, he gave up 1 solo shot to Matt Olson in the 7th inning, and he had no run support whatsoever. So that just, it's been that way though for a long time, and that's why I think fans were so mad about, they got Luis Garcia Jr. and they got Heliot Ramos, but like it just didn't seem like, you just felt like there was a bigger move still, and especially catching wise, and they didn't do that. And George Lombard Jr. to me should have been up a while ago. And it felt like a move to kind of distract the fans from going nuts over how they approached the trade deadline. And, Cashman was asked about it literally right after the trade deadline and kind of like dodged it. And then the next day he gets called up. That's what I mean. It kind of seems like weird timing to me. But yeah, George Lombard Jr. has been really impressive to watch. I mean, it's night and day compared to him and Volpe and Caballero. You mentioned the double plays, but even his bats. I mean, he faced Chris Sale yesterday. In the first two at bats, he saw 17 pitches, including two ABS challenges that he won back to back. Um, that were called strikes that he drew balls from. His eye is just impressive for a 21-year-old. So at least we have something to look forward to.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Yeah, just the offense again, just even go back further because I know we didn't really fully touch on it last week during our trade deadline show we did, but you want to go back further. The Yankees had 9 against the White Sox on Monday, July 27th. Um, the high mark again after was last Monday against the Cardinals, like you mentioned, Kyle, but it was 7. So, um, yeah, after that, the Yankees have not gotten to 5 runs. They've only done that twice, even in this run going back to the end of July. So, same week, or different week, same struggle points we're discussing there. So, um, should mention too, I didn't realize this, and it kind of caught me off guard to a degree, but maybe that's just my old brain thinking too. But like Garrett Cole, the fastest Yankee pitcher to 1,000 strikeouts in their Yankee career. Um, I don't know. Maybe it's because of the injury stuff with him too, to a degree. I don't know, but like it kind of caught me a little bit, like I said, off guard that he's the fastest Yankee pitcher in history team wise to get to 1,000. He achieved that on Saturday, and um. I don't know, maybe too with it being Old Timers Day. I don't know if that tied into it too, but it's like, I don't know. It just felt kind of surprising, at least to me anyway.
Yeah, it was a bit surprising. As you mentioned, didn't start the year with the team. Started off kind of, I would say a little slow, but man, in his last 7 starts, 2.72 ERA, against the Braves, one of the better lineups in the league. He looked really good. Gets a lot of swing and miss, kind of the old vintage Garrett Cole. And how about this? He's throwing the ball harder than ever before. This is post-surgery. And this is a guy that just keeps aging too. And he's still throwing the ball incredibly well. And you know, Max Fried's finally back and pitching alongside him. We didn't see that for a while, until a few weeks ago. And of course, you had Cam Schlittler in. I mean, this is why this team should give you hope still, because if you have those three guys line up in a postseason series, and even Carlos Rodon is your fourth, I mean, that is scary. And then on top of that, the bullpen still has the second best ERA in the league. I mean, you just hope that they do get Judge Bellinger, and I guess we can throw in Stanton, but even Judge and Bellinger, it's just a major, major difference. And if Jazz Chisholm Jr. could just figure something out, I mean, even Ryan McMahon is starting to figure things out a little bit. How about this? Austin Wells, his last 14 games, 281
Hmm.
batting average, 5 extra base hits. He's also drawing walks, where he went over a month without drawing a walk. So, Jazz, we're waiting for you. I mean, even Ben Rice had a big home run over the weekend, a game-tying double or single Friday night. But that Jazz Chisholm Jr. guy, man, swing and miss. That's all we keep seeing from him.
Yeah, so I don't know. We'll see what happens there. The Yankees are off today on Monday, the 10th, then 3 here against Seattle in the Bronx, then at Toronto over the weekend for a weekend series. So big games. Seattle's kind of figured some stuff out here recently. I think it might help the fact that the West has kind of come back down to earth, the other teams, so they've been able to kind of figure themselves out more or less involving that. Toronto, obviously, we know does not matter what state they're in, they just will always give the Yankees fits. So, um, obviously, I hope, especially the gap now to Tampa is 5.5, and I, in this sense, luckily Boston lost the series this weekend. Um, on the Yankee side of things here, but man, this you're at the point now where they can't, to me, just afford to keep living by these 500 weeks. There has to be, to me, a couple series wins here for the Yankees this week.
Yeah, and I mentioned, and we both mentioned the offensive struggles. You look at the Seattle starters, and you always feel that way. It seems like every year when the Yankees play the Mariners, their starting pitching just usually has the upper edge. But I don't know about this time. Believe it or not, the Mariners, they have not scored a ton of runs either. They've been really struggling, actually. They've lost 7 of their last 10 games. Cal Raleigh just has been unbelievably bad. Um, Yeah, so I kind of feel somewhat good, but at the same sense, you look at the arms the Mariners are putting out there, it's a little worrisome. Although, look what they did against Chris Sale. I mean, I know you'd say that's baseball, but literally
Hmm.
that's what happened. So yeah, they definitely need a couple series wins. And we'll just hopefully inch closer to getting Judge and Bellinger back.
Yeah. Another week down for the Yankees. Let's flip over to the Mets side of things. And my God, Kyle, I think this is the first time all year I've been able to say this. A winning week for the New York Mets. They sweep Cleveland. They get 2 of 3 against Pittsburgh. Ignore Saturday, I guess, in that sense. But um, they sold at the trade deadline, right? And we talked about a couple weeks ago about how, like, if you're the Mets at this point, you're probably just going to be like, okay, let's let the young guys just kind of figure out what they got, and we will get to a couple of the veterans because obviously they cannot go a week without being in the headlines. But I was watching the Pittsburgh series, not closely, but probably closer than I thought I would be over the weekend. And man, the young guys to me set the table really well for them, all things considered. Um, the offense has been alive for the most part here. Their pitching's kind of been where they always have been all year. Um, I like we said last week, it's going to take a miracle for the Mets, right? To it'd probably be the biggest sports headline of the year if they somehow were to rally at this point to get to the postseason. But like, if it doesn't make you feel a little bit good though as a fan, where it's like, okay, these young guys stepped up, they're stepping up. Like, it was a nice week in the sense of like, at least you're not completely getting just punched in the head over and over again.
Keep in mind, they did do it against two teams that are both fighting for their playoff lives. I mean, the Guardians are, I would consider, a solid team. They struggle at times, as they have recently, though. But that was very encouraging the way they went out and went to Cleveland and, even won a one-score game. And they played Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh is also has made a lot of moves, and they're trying to fight for a wild card spot. Saturday was just an odd one, but overall, I mean, they really played well. And like you said, I don't think we've ever seen a stretch like this, where they've just felt like I would say loose too. If you watch some of the games, I mean, yesterday they put up 11 runs and they're celebrating, and they look, all the young guys are like feeling good about themselves, confidence. And I guess it could be that way too because there's no pressure. They know what just happened at the deadline and they know it's their opportunity to take a step forward and they're making the most of it. And yeah, you mentioned it's going to take a miracle and everything, but if you just start slowly stringing together some solid weeks, all of a sudden you're going to look and you might be 6, 7 games under 500 instead of 15. And you never know because they're also playing teams that are in front of them, as we always say every year too. You look like the Braves and Nationals and Padres, like they're all teams ahead of them. So they definitely have opportunities here to at least fight their way back and make it interesting.
I think there's the element too of just having a respectable, I think, finish to the season, right? The way the season's been for the Mets, and we're going to discuss a little bit of that again, right now. But like, it, and that's why I think, it also boils down to when you let these young guys kind of figure it out right now, right? It's just you still get the sense of playing with purpose and handling yourselves as I guess bigger professionals at this point, right? Not a knock on anything, but playing in New York City for the Mets is very much so different than playing in Syracuse or Binghamton or Port St. Lucie, right? Well, I guess Brooklyn to a lesser degree, but it's just one of those things where, um, the spotlight gets a little bit bigger, brighter, whatever you want to call it. And I think kind of seeing your AJ Ewings and Carson Bench had a great weekend, despite
Boba, Boba shot a 5 hit
yeah.
game yesterday.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing too. Like I mentioned with the veterans, like you've seen since he came back from the IL, Lindor's played better. Bichette obviously has kind of figured himself out. I mean, even like yesterday, Marcus Simeon had a pretty big impact game. Well, just like one of those things where, um, offensively, and that's the thing. Like we talked about this probably a month and a half or so ago. Like the pitching on this team was never really in doubt this year. It's just the offense was just, I talk about like with the Yankees, but like the Mets, their offense has just been miserable as well, like to the point that, yeah, I don't know, take your pick about whatever you want to go with them at this point. So, um, but yeah, let's kind of get into this again. We've chapter what four, 3 or 4 on the year of Juan Soto and Francisco Lindor comes out um, on the heels of the deadline last week. Um, former Met, now Tampa Bay Ray, Freddie Peralta apparently had to sit them down in June to kind of clear the air, and Peralta said through his translator that it was more as men and not teammates than anything else. And um, it's just again one of those things where it's like these two, and it does make you question officially at this point, right? Because like now, I would say it's more than just smoke around this fire. You know what I mean? And I don't know, it seems like things have gotten warmer between the two, obviously since then and everything, but um to keep going back to like this upcoming off season here amongst everything else, but like, what's the future of these two together at this point, right? Because like if you have to sit them down and not approach it from a teammate angle, but as just a human angle, it's like I don't know. I just don't think you can coexist at that point. Could you for sure, but I don't know. To me, Kyle, like when you sent me the article about this last week, I'm like they're just it's the Mets. Like they can't get out of their own way here again. And now you got your two biggest stars at the moment again in the headlines because eh, they just can't. Yeah, well, they just couldn't be civil here at some point between each other, clearly.
Yeah, and I know we'll probably never know, but I just find it so odd that they would even have an issue with each other, considering, I mean, up until this year, Lindor had been one of the best shortstops in baseball. He put up crazy offensive numbers the last couple of years, great defender, came over from Cleveland. Juan Soto, has already won a World Series. They're both, have experience. You would think that like they wouldn't try to create an issue and they would be happy to be together, playing together, and something must have gone on that we just won't probably ever know about, and maybe it's personal, and I don't know, but I do find it odd too that Freddie Peralta kind of leaks that story after he gets traded, and it's almost like, oh well, now I don't have to deal with it anymore.
Yeah, and to clarify a couple things too that I said, Steve Cohen said like he doesn't see either Lindor or Soto being moved. I I'm sorry to him, but like I to me it's very apparent that if they can move on from Lindor, I think they're going to try to at this point. I
Yeah.
I get what he means. He has to say more or less that, but like again, where there's smoke, there's fire at this point between these two. And I'm sorry, I have to look at it from the angle of you mean to tell me Juan Soto's going to opt out of his deal because I just do not see that happening. Obviously, money's money. So, but I mean, hey, if that's the only downside to the Mets right now, again, as usual, then so be it. They still have to go out and try and figure everything out in that sense for the rest of the way here. And I don't know, who knows, right? At the end of the day with them, for them, their next week here is interesting as well because guess what? They're at Atlanta for the next 3 days. They have an off day on Thursday. And then you get Washington again for them, and that's at home. And that's a team that restructured at the trade deadline as well. And it's pretty apparent Atlanta's, I wouldn't say they're on the back heel, but they certainly aren't God, it's so weird saying it this way since they still are at the top of the heap. But like they aren't the threat I feel like they were at, like a month and a half, 2 months ago. We were talking about the Braves. Um, that being said, despite how good the Mets have been the past week plus, I just don't know if it's going to be in the cards for this series. I view it more for the cards of the National Series on the weekend, but um, I feel weird saying it this way, but like if you're the Mets and you come out of this with a 500 week, it's tough to feel bad. But like, I don't know. It's one of those things where it's like you have a uphill battle against Atlanta and then a much so easier time on the weekend against Washington.
Yeah, I have a feeling the Brave series probably won't go as well as it just did against the Pirates or the Guardians, but Maybe they can grab one and, take 2 out of 3 for the Nationals. And yeah, it's only going to be a 500 week at that point. But, at this point, as bad as it's been, I think you'll take a 3-3 week after a 5-1 week.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. So, um, yeah, other than that, for the Mets, shout out Jeffrey Yan, man. I'm all on board the Yan train. I do not care what anybody says. You can fight me to the death on that one if you disagree otherwise. So, um, yeah, other than that, Kyle, that about does it for the podcast this week. Um, I have a wisdom tooth coming out Wednesday. So we're going to have a podcast next week. I just don't know fully when yet, if it's going to be Monday or Tuesday. I think it's going to more or less depend. I don't want to say how I'm feeling, but more or less if I'm going to be able to fully talk the way I have to talk in that sense. So, we'll be back next week, more or less TBD whether it's Monday or Tuesday, and we'll go from there. But yeah, just one of those things where, teeth are fun, people. So, all right, we'll get out here on that note. Appreciate everybody for listening and tuning into Concrete Jungle this week. You can find Concrete Jungle here on fingerlakes1.com, the FL1 YouTube channel, the audio only version of the podcast on all major podcast platforms. Enjoy the week, everybody. We'll talk again next week.